Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 301 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I secretly love Mondays. I know most people hate them. Even my wife was telling me last night that she absolutely hates Mondays. This was actual conversation last night. My logic has always been that Monday is a fresh start. It's a time when we can reassess our goals for the month and then take corrective action if we feel like we're not making progress or we're not on the right path. So today, we are going to talk about Mondays. But do you know how many Mondays you have left in life? You see, you get 4,000 Mondays on average. And while the bad news is that you're totally going to kick the bucket, the good news is there's still time to live before you die. Learn how your mortality can motivate you to make the most of your precious time above ground. And time is ticking. Jodi Wellman knows this all too often because she is a leading authority on living lives worth living. As a speaker and a facilitator, she helps her clients live squander-free lives while they're lucky enough to still be above ground, while cleverly beginning with the big end in mind. She named her business 4,000 Mondays because it shines the light on the finite number of weeks we have to live like we mean it. That's what I meant. Jodi holds a master's of applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where she is also an assistant instructor. As a certified coach with 25 years of corporate leadership experience, she helps executives, teams, and high performers work well and live even better. Welcome to the show, Jodi.
Woohoo! Thank you for having me here. I'm overly excited to be chatting with you.
I knew this was going to be a really fun conversation. So I am so happy that we had the opportunity to make this happen and do a quick turnaround, because let me tell my audience, Jodi is phenomenal. Okay. Go and watch her TED Talk. And I'm telling you, you're going to think the same thing. I promise you. But before we even get to all of that, I want to go back, okay? This is kind of like a blast from the past. And the reason why I bring this up is because our college students listening right now, they think success is a straight line, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like all over the map. You know, you make some left turns, some right turns, and you're trying to figure out, what is your true north, which is different for everybody. And so you were a corporate executive for Bally Total Fitness for over 7 years of your life. So what did you learn in that time?
Oh my gosh. I love that you're going back in time, because I also believe that, of course, it's like, that's who makes us who we are today. But I love the archives because there are such good nuggets there. And first of all, the fitness business is a freaking amazing business. So if anybody is unsure, like, what kind of industry do I want to work in? Go investigate the fitness industry. It can be not only so much fun and energizing, but it's also pretty lucrative. And so that was a lot of fun. And one of the things that I learned personally was, the importance of the need for variety. And so fortunately, I was in a company that brought the opportunity to grow and do different things. And so for me, every 18 months, I wanted something new. And thankfully, there always was a new role that thankfully was generally moving up a proverbial ladder. And so I had a chance to do so many cool things, whether it was kind of running a region and having kind of responsibility for the P&L. And then it was working in the corporate office and overseeing operations, or overseeing the learning and development programs, or figuring like the ability to dabble. I recommend for people, maybe pick a company. First of all, pick a cool industry. But second of all, pick a company where maybe you can try a bunch of different things, so that if and when you get bored, you've got lots of different pathways to take. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out one of the main things I learned while I worked there was, admittedly, the last few years, I got that itch. I don't know if you ever had it, where you're like, you know what, this isn't cutting it for me anymore. I'm feeling a little dead inside.
Yeah.
And I learned the very grave lesson that I did nothing about it. And you know what? Change didn't happen to me. The thing I wanted somehow for some miraculous new cool career to come land on my lap, and it never happened. And I'm still so shocked at that. Not really. I know more than ever, and this is how I help people figure out what they want to do next, is you have to take action. You got to go and do the work and figure out what might be interesting to do next. And so I was the example of feeling stuck, but not being willing, being too scared to do anything about it. You know what? Take that first step. It's scary, sure, but there's really cool stuff out there. So that was actually a kind of a key learning I didn't expect, was make the change.
Yeah, I love that. You're right. And you have to take action in order to make that happen. I mean, I know some of our students who are listening, they're in fraternities and sororities. Some of them might be in smaller organizations, which does give them access to a lot of different areas in their organization. And I think Gen Z really likes that. They like the ability to kind of look at different jobs and figure out for themselves what is exciting to them instead of just being pigeonholed into just one
Yeah.
specific area. Like I was an accounting major, so if I was just doing accounts payable and writing checks all day, I mean, after a month I would be like, I got to get out of here because I've written checks for 30 days and I got to see something else. There's got to be more to life than this, right? so,
Help.
so I think that I like your philosophy. I think it is really good of trying different things to try to figure out what it is that you want to do. And early
Yeah.
on in your career, if you are working for a smaller company, chances are you will get access to a lot of different things to do. And
Yeah.
that might be helpful for you as opposed to a really, really large organization that's probably just going to stick you in one specific area. So something to think about, certainly, I think. And both of us actually went back to get our master's degree recently. I'm a glutton for a punishment because I'm just going to go for the doctorate. I'm just going.
You're
And so,
unstoppable.
yeah, just keep going, just keep running. So you ended up at UPenn, which is a fantastic institution. You got your master's in applied positive psychology. What made you want to go back and pursue that particular degree?
Mm. Well, I learned about positive psychology. I'm just going to guess now, let's say 10 years ago. I didn't even know it was a thing. Most
Mhm.
people don't still. My dad still doesn't even understand what it is. And that's totally fine. He's 85 and I don't really expect him to anymore. Um, and well, when I learned it was a thing, and I learned that I can go to a school where the dude who's like Martin Seligman, I'm reading all his books. I can go and learn at his feet. That sounded great. But my decision about going back was like, I looked at it like a pie chart. I don't know why I look at life in a lot of like Venn diagrams or pie charts or whatever. And I could see like 3 equal pieces. And I was like, number 1, I want knowledge. I actually want to learn this stuff. Like, I don't want to just read the book. I want to know it. Okay, that was good. Number 2 is I wanted the credibility of, if I want to get on bigger stages and I want people to know that I know what I'm talking about when I talk about well-being or how the Grim Reaper is actually helpful, which we'll, I'm sure, get to. I want to be credible enough so people think it's legit. So that's a piece of pie. And then the third big chunk of pie left was I wanted to buy myself confidence. Like, if I'm being honest, like I just wanted to be able to feel like when I put myself out there, whether it was for a big gig or to do a consulting thing or to meet with people, that I actually felt like that, that kind of, I've earned the right to feel legit here. And so that was my mind frame. And now, that those 3 pieces of pie have fortunately been delivering.
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me. I totally get that credibility, the confidence, all of it. I mean, it makes total sense to me that you want to be an authority in that figure and feel really comfortable on stage delivering that message from a position of, yeah, I've studied this and I feel really good about it. So I think it makes total sense to me. And so now you're the founder, you're a TEDx speaker, you're a coach for 4,000 Mondays. Now you help people live like they mean it. So, how many Mondays do you have left? That's
Okay.
question number 1. And then
Okay.
the follow up is, why is that the key to living the liveliest version of your life?
Okay. So I know I have, well, I shouldn't say I know. On average, I had 1,900 this week. So
Okay.
yesterday was the 1,900 check mark left. And it's based on a calculation that women live on average till 83, I minus my age and times 52. And there we go. Now, I'm fully hopeful that I will live longer than that, but I'm also unfortunately realistic enough to know that, I could end up with an untimely demise. Like this could be, you could say next week if I get hit by a car that you knew me. And the reason this is so valuable, and I know it sounds morbid, right? But if ideally we can poke some fun at it, and the fact that the absurdity of life, we all know we have an expiry date. No, this isn't news to anybody, but we don't often think about it, because it's quite frankly, it can be depressing. But if we look at it with intention, and there's this old Latin phrase called memento mori, which does translate to remember that we must die. And there's so much cool research out there that does show if we actively stop, and in my translation, like let's count the Mondays, when we really realize how scarce life really is, something happens where we see it as more precious. And we take it for granted. We all do. That's the way we're wired. But when we really do stop and recognize that, oh, it is a limited resource. Oh, now I better get down to the business of living like I mean it. Like I better not start, I've got all this time. I'll do it later. I'll travel later. I'll visit those friends later. You know what? We may not have the gift of later. Like, let's do it now. That's the urgency. And I get all worked up about it. And I just get so excited because like now that we have, all we really have is now. And so let's use that to our advantage, right?
Yeah. I love that thinking. I think it's right on. It is dead on. And that's why I do what I do, because just like you said, I mean, I can do that calculation and say that I have 2,000 Mondays left. But
Mm.
at the end of the day, like I know the time is ticking, but I also know that just like you said, I can walk across the street over here and get hit by a Mack truck. And I want my life to have meant something. So it's that fear that like, does my life, is it meaningful? Am I impacting others? I feel like there's a purpose for me being here. Like
Yeah.
somebody sent me here on a mission, and I have no idea when that mission is going to expire. So I better get as much done as I possibly can. And people are like, "You're nuts," for running Greek University, for trying to get a doctorate at the same time, and then oh by the way, you're pulling down all these grants through MTSU to try and solve the opioid crisis. Like, how much can one person do? But I'm like, well, if my time expires next week, I'm not going to be sad that I did all of those things. I'm going to be happy, you know?
Huh. Yeah. Well, I think that's well said. And what you're highlighting for me is you're probably at one end of a spectrum of like, let's just like dare to call you an overachiever. Okay. Let's just dare to call you that.
Maybe.
And so you're an example of you're maxing out tons of life. Like I look at that on like a couple spectrums, right? Like you're really maxing out, especially the meaning side of life,
Oh yeah.
doing things that you feel are purpose driven, and you're
100%.
on this mission, like you said.
I'm on a mission.
And 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 I do think that if we're not being careful, like some people might look at you as a role, some people look at you as a role model. Like, let me do, like, I want that kind of life because that feels cool. Some people might look at overachieving lives, whether it's because you're having all the fun or all the meaning or both, and think, oh, I'm just tired even like listening to all the cool things you're up to. And so I do just want to be careful, because as I recommend that we live wide and deep and carpe diem, and I will put it in all caps, like, oh, but wait, it's relative to whatever like floats your boat. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so
It's a
no
great
pressure, like, hey, if you just want to, like, I work with a woman, actually, I'm thinking about somebody who is just a recent college graduate, and they want to figure out like, what's my purpose? Like, what's the thing I really want to be doing?
Mhm.
And she came to this conclusion. She's like, for now, like, I don't know exactly career wise yet. I'm figuring that out. And, it'll probably take like a decade, and it'll change, and it'll change again. And it'll change again. She goes, for now, my purpose is to be the person that just lights people up. So whenever I interact with them, I want them to leave feeling like they're in a better mood than they were before they met me. And
Perfect.
that's purpose.
Yeah, that is purpose. Yeah, I mean, I get that like not everyone is going to be like me, focused on mission, right, or purpose all the time. There's got to be a fun, aspect of it. This is what I do for fun, so it's kind of weird
Mm-hmm.
in that
Yeah.
way, and not everybody thinks that way. And even my wife is like, for her, we had this whole discussion last night, exactly what we're talking about here, which is for her, her purpose or her mission might be spending time with family. Like that
Yeah.
to her is important as opposed to the mission which is what, I'm focused on. She's more like, hey, how do I spend all this time with family, because that's really what I want to spend my life doing, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's so different.
Clarity.
So maybe we're actually good partners in that respect, because I think we balance each other out really well. But yeah, her thinking is totally different than mine, so I don't want to project that onto our listeners either, because it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Variety for everybody. Yep.
Totally, totally. Now, obviously, we're coming out of this pandemic. Are we really out of this pandemic? Who knows? We can have that debate. But I feel like COVID-19 took all of the wind out of our sails, because all of us were isolated for so long. We weren't seeing family, we weren't seeing friends. We were just kind of holed up in our homes. So how do we rekindle all of these friendships that we had? How do we pick up all of the hobbies maybe that we stopped doing and start living again?
Okay, first of all, I'm so loving this question because I think you're onto something big, right? Like COVID did zap the life out of so many of us.
Mhm.
And I think number one is we have to just acknowledge it and actually, instead of judging ourselves, which is, feeling that like I'm not living the life I'm supposed to be, or I haven't gotten back on track yet, or wow, the world is reopening, but I haven't joined the fray yet. First of all, like, let's chill out. Like, you know what? Life got weird and it's still weird. But now, number one, I recommend that we diagnose the dead zones. Like, pick of all the different areas of your life, you kind of know, right? Like maybe it's your social life that feels particularly dead, or maybe it's the love life or like lack of love life, or maybe it's the area of your health. Maybe it's probably not growth and development because you're all like learning up a storm right now. So there's probably like growth overload, learning overload. But pick the part of your life where you feel particularly dead right now, post COVID. And that's an area where you can start and say, okay, I'm going to grab onto this. And maybe it is the social stuff. Maybe it is the R&R, like hobbies. What are those again? And it's identify one thing that might kind of light you up. That's all life is just looking for one little, like the embers. Hey, this could be kind of neat. Let me go pursue that. Wow, do I want to learn how to speak Italian? Maybe. Or do I want to play the trombone? Well, for me, no, but maybe for you, yes. And so maybe that's the one, like just pick one thing in the area of life that you feel the most flatlined, and take one step forward towards like living again and participating again. We put pressure on ourselves that we all of a sudden have to be living big. And then it's unsustainable, or it's just overwhelming, especially when you got a bunch of classes and essays and stuff to do. Just pick one little area, register for that cool thing, or make a reservation for that cool restaurant. Just one little thing at a time. That's
I
the
love
thing.
that.
Don't overwhelm. Yeah.
That's great advice. I mean, I have a friend, I'm not going to out him at all. Happens to be extremely good looking guy, incredibly successful. I mean, beyond belief, but his love life is just totally non existent. And he describes it, because I would ask him, I'm like, are you ever going to settle down? And he's like, oh no. He's like, my heart is cold and gray and like cobwebs. He's going on to this whole description, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, don't you think that's a problem? I'm like, the way you're describing it sounds awful.
And
So
is he motivated to change it, or is he
I
like
mean,
happy with
I
it?
think he's just, so busy with other, life demands, that he's basically shelved that and basically said, I'm not looking at that part of my life, right? It's
Mhm.
just, that's the area we don't go to. That's the area that we don't talk about. And I'm like, this isn't good for you. This is not a good thing. But so it got me thinking about him a little bit. I'm not going to out him, but he knows who he
He
is.
knows who he is.
He
Yeah.
knows. He
Yeah.
knows.
We'll thaw that cold formaldehyde heart.
That's what it is. It's formaldehyde. And I'm like, I heard that description. I'm like, that sounds awful. All right. So I'm curious, what's in your book of coulda, shoulda, wouldas? I mean, you've already done this TEDx talk. I'm sure that had to be one of those things that you wanted to do. And how can all of us who are listening to this interview now, I mean, how can your regrets help wake you up to the life that you really want to be living?
Regrets are some of my favorite things. And actually, research shows that of all of the negative emotions that exist, which, there are a crap ton of them out there, regrets are actually rated as the best of the worst, because at least we know that regrets can be effective in that if we let them do the heavy lifting, like if you tune in to the important task, I think, of stopping and imagining that, you're on your deathbed. And I always like to imagine it conveniently. It's very peaceful and it's pain-free and you look fabulous and it's great.
Sure.
But so you're there tonight, like
great.
this is imminent. And maybe there's morphine, I don't know, but things are good. And you're looking back on your life and you're like, what's the thing that gives you the pangs? And they could be, for many people, for most of us, it's the stuff that we didn't do, rather than something we did do, because, our brains are wired to really go to ruminate over what I could have, should have done. So you asked about mine. I try hard to be squander free. Like I really stop and think about this a lot, but if I am being honest, I would regret not having more of an active social life, because I highly value the work stuff. Cause I think we're similar. Like you said, the stuff you do for work is fun. It is life. And so, So like when I have text messages from friends, I feel a little bit like conflict. Cause I'm like, you're getting in the way of me doing my work. But then I want to respond to them because I generally like these people. But I do recognize, and there was actually a neat book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. And she does identify that she's a hospice worker, or used to be. And she would capture from people at their last moments. Many of them did say that they regretted, one of the top 5 regrets was that they regretted losing touch with their friends near the end. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you know what, we could be doing all this work, but if it other people matter, I do have a bit of an awareness of that, but clearly I don't sound very motivated to do anything about it. But the key is for all of us is what's one thing that you would feel, that little thing, damn, is it that I didn't book the trip to go to that, the I don't even know how you say it. Do you say Maldives?
Yeah, Maldives. Yeah.
That's how you say it?
Sure.
I feel proud I said it right. Is it maybe that you didn't book that trip? Is it maybe that you didn't start to write that book? Is it that you didn't make up with your sister? Find the thing that would be the deathbed pang. And you could do, again, back to one thing today, maybe send that sister a text, or maybe actually book a trip in the calendar for maybe when you're done school of, this is the Maldives day, Operation Mortality Maldives, anti-regret.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, for me, one of the things I wanted to do was write some books, right? So we got a couple of books here out during the pandemic in 2021, which is fantastic, working on a third. But I want those words. I have so many things that I want to say. There's so many things I want to get off my chest. I want them written down somewhere so that way somebody can pick them up after I'm gone and learn from that. And so that's really what motivates me. But you're right. I mean, there are some really important people in my life that I've probably ignored because I've been so focused on that part. And even now doing the doctorate, I mean, every weekend I'm writing these papers with 25 citations. I mean, who's got time for friends? It's where is that time going to come from? I have no idea. So there's this conflict here, and maybe I think, well, once I get the doctorate, then I'll be satisfied, right? Once I get there, then I'll have time for friends. But then there's always something else to chase.
Yeah, you just busted yourself.
I did bust
you're
myself.
Onto yourself.
I know I'm busting myself. I recognize the fact that I always need something to chase. There's always some other hill to climb. And maybe when I get to my deathbed, I'm going to be like, you've been a climber your whole life and you never stop to look around.
Right. Or you're doing all these successful things, but there's no one around you to enjoy it with.
Right. Who's around? No one's going to be around because I stopped talking to them.
Exactly. Well, I keep thinking I'll make lots of friends in the seniors home when I'm senile. Or I hope we'll be senile and we won't even miss people because we won't even know who they are.
Jodi, I'm so doomed. I already know how the story ends, and it's terrible.
No, we need to flip this on its head, man. We're gonna put a silver lining on it by the time we're done.
All right, I hope so. I mean, the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, we might be boring ourselves to death with our habits and our routines. I mean, what are some ways that we're actually boring ourselves to death?
Oh, habits are just tricky bits, right? Because I think habits are important when you're starting something out. figuring out, okay, what's my study schedule? So I actually do like pass. Or what is something getting to actually going to class? That's a habit you need to get in the routine of. Or working out, like things that are just like, I'm okay to be in a little bit of autopilot in my life in these ways because they get me towards goals that are really important. Okay, fine. I'm going to be flexible and say habits, we'll let them slide there. But habits are, I believe, risky business because they dull our lives because we just get into these like repeat, and then all of a sudden it's like, how is this month any different than last month, which is any different than the month before? And that is how we become these highly functioning zombies, is because we're just repeating. It's like Groundhog Day. And so habits work until they don't. And I do think we just need to every now and then be intentional about jostling things. Like take your life like a freaking snow globe and shake it up and be like, okay, the thing I normally do that works for me, like, fine. Once you've mastered the art of showing up at class, attending and or doing your work, now you can start to shake it up a little bit, like take a different route or sit with different people or have a totally different experience while you're studying or eat a totally different meal and like shake up your experience of being alive, even in the subtlest ways. We underestimate the impact of how that it does impact our perception of well-being, but it does. Novelty is crucial to feel like we are living lives worth living. Shake it up.
Yeah, I love that advice. That is fantastic. You know, I think you and I would agree that our priorities have shifted from
Mm,
when we, were in our 20s
mm,
versus where we are today. And so, like, for example, when I graduated from college, it was all about driving the nice sports car. I had a brand new white Mustang, beautiful. I wanted to, have a big house, and all of these things. And so that's what mattered then. Now
uh,
it's more about the legacy, right? What
uh-huh.
legacy am I leaving? That is what consumes me today. So there was a shift. But do you think that college students should be thinking about their legacy now as college students?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I do. And this one to me is just so softball because I love this. This is like the life you're leading now is the life you'll continue to build on. And so there's a quote by an author, Alice Walker, and I'm probably going to botch it. It's something like, look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look a lot like the future you are dreaming of. So if you like, I'm a big fan of, okay, begin with the end in mind. Like what kind of life, like, how do you want to live? How do you want to die? Like, do you want to get to the end and not have regrets? Well, most of us would say yes. So then if you work backwards, are you living a life now? Because we can ruthlessly edit our lives. We have the ability to do that, right? Like when I told you I was quote unquote stuck in my corporate job. No, I wasn't. Like you just need to like get a little bit of a spine and maybe a coach and like get some help. But um legacy is like, who do you want to be? The people, how do you want people to remember you? How do you want to do you want to write a book? Do you want to build something that people do feel like? So there's like this called rippling, or even beyond when you're gone. And it could be not even gone like from the planet. It could be gone from when you're done school. Do you want to have something that carries on? Or is it that you want an event that you do with your friends where it becomes some kind of a ritual as friends that you do every year, or 5 years you take a massive, big, amazing overseas trip? Or is there something that matters to you that you do feel would be cool to be thought of or reflected on or left behind? All that stuff you're building towards now, that's an example to me where if we plan it like late in our careers when we're about to retire, well, that ship has sailed, I think. Do it now, right? Everything. The message, I think, every answer we talk about today,
Do it now.
all should relate to do it now.
Stick
There's
with
no
your great
time.
advice.
Time's ticking, Michael. I'm thinking.
So, the other day I was reading through, I love to read college students, like, and what they're thinking and like what's going through their head and how they're making decisions. That's really important for me as a speaker who works with college students. And
Mm,
this one fraternity guy basically was talking about the fact that he had joined like the biggest party house on
mm,
his college campus, and now he's a senior. And maybe when he was a freshman, that made sense because that's what he was looking for. But now he felt like his fraternity had no meaning to him, that he didn't feel like fulfilled by it. And I think a lot of our students join organizations. It could be a fraternity, sorority, it could be anything. What
Yeah.
if the organization they belong to doesn't have the vitality? It doesn't have the deeper meaning that we expected it to have.
Ooh, that's such a cool question because it mimics so many parts of life, right? Like whether it's fraternity or whether it's, let's just say, when you go to get a job, we
Mhm.
always have these high hopes that
Right.
the job is going to deliver on all these things we hope it'll deliver on. And like, it's going to fall short, right? Like not, and we know enough not to expect perfection, I think. But this is such a real issue. And I think that the number one first step is that number one, I just expect that it's not going to deliver everything. Number two is extract what you can from it. Okay. So whether it is like, okay, you know what, there are a few key people that I feel like I connect with, or there are these neat things we do together in the community, or there is this cool party thing we do, which is kind of fun. Like find the things, like zero in on the things that actually are working for you.
Mhm.
And then like everything in life, like you're responsible, you're your own entertainment director, you're your own spiritual advisor. Like you be the one to take the initiative to go round out the rest of your life elsewhere. So maybe that does mean getting involved in a different part of a community. Maybe it's getting a different friend group, not abandoning who you have and who you're with, but augmenting. Like that's it. It's how are you going to augment your life so that it feels as well-rounded as you want it to be? And so this is, of course, true, 5 years from now in a career choice where you're like, I work with a lot of people where they're like, it just doesn't have like my work doesn't have a ton of purpose or meaning, or,
Mhm.
okay, well, where can you find it outside of work? Maybe sometimes it means changing work, but
Mhm.
often it's, or, it's so boring. Like I do my thing and I want to have more fun in my life. Okay, well, the work can't be where you entirely expect it, or the fraternity or sorority can't be entirely where you expect it. Go out and register for that axe throwing class if you want to do something fun on the side with another group of people. So I think it's a little bit about you sucking the marrow out of life. Sometimes needs to be that you're taking the bold steps of doing it outside of the container that you're already in.
Got it. Yeah, makes total sense to me. So I know a lot of people who are listening right now absolutely dread Mondays, right? I got to go back
Mhm.
to school. I just had fun all weekend. Now school starts, homework, papers, tests, all of
Mm.
that stuff. How can we love the
Mm.
worst day of the week?
Okay, well, first, let's be honest. Like Fridays are always going to win. Okay, like
Right.
Fridays are always the best days. Let's acknowledge that. And then number two is I'm going to go back to counter Mondays. When we really recognize that it's a diminishing number, they matter more. So that's important. And then the third one I would say is let's have fun with this. Imagine again, you've been given a death sentence, and let's just say you found out you have a year left to live,
Mhm.
and that's 52 Mondays. Are you not going to treat those Mondays a little different than if you would
Precious.
if you were like, I got like how many thousands left? Yeah, you're going to change a little bit about how you handle those. And you
100%.
will also probably change your Tuesdays and Wednesdays and other days of the week too. But getting in touch with that scarcity, that's the mindset that helps us to stop and say, whoa, you know what? Yeah, Mondays may be a little less lovely than Fridays, but the point is you're here, you get to show up, you get to have fun. If you pursue it, you get to make meaning. If you dig for it, like we're here. Let's use this time.
Yeah. Yeah, you really framed it up nicely. If I think I have 52 Mondays left, you better believe I'm going to hit every week as hard as I can. I'm going to be on college campuses every day of the week, just trying to get as many books out there, my words out there, connect with as many students as I can. I
Oh,
mean, oh my God.
and 52 restaurants.
And 52
Well, 52,
restaurants.
like on every Monday or
Yeah,
and
you better believe it because I love good food. I mean, that's like what I live for. It's good food is too. Is like I chase that, right? And so here's the thing: you live in Chicago, and there's like a bazillion great restaurants in Chicago. I mean, if we could go deep dish pizza, I mean, there's so many things to cover here. So I'm wondering, where do you go for a great
oh golly. Yeah, this is just like it's a trick question. I don't know.
meal?
But if I have to answer, okay, so I'll go really cool dinner spot, cozy, ambient, romantic, with an even cooler bar downstairs, which is even darker and cooler and more romantic. Bavette's is the name, Bavetts, on
Okay.
Kinsey, right downtown River North. So Bavette's, and if you want like the cool diner feel, old school, if you're into whatever, if you're into like the hockey team, it's a place called Palace Grill. Old school, best Greek omelets in the entire city. Just fantastic. So I would say between those two, you can't go hungry for long.
That sounds fantastic. You know, the next time I'm in Chicago, I'm definitely going to go check out those places. And I'm also going to see if you're available because you're going to have to meet me for a drink. I mean, I'm just throwing it out
Done. Done. Maybe two. Maybe two.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun. I like I said, I'm a big fan of yours. I think your TED Talk is absolutely incredible. Your message is just so important. I mean, I can't say enough good things about the message. I really, really wish, especially with college students, for them to not think about 2,500 Mondays. I want them to think that, they really need to give it all right now and put it all out there, because I don't think they're going to regret that if they do, if they have that scarcity that you talk about. So I love your message. I just think it's so important. So if our student listeners who are listening right now, if they want you to come and speak on their campus to talk about this, where should they go? What's the best way to connect with you?
Well, thanks for asking, first of all. And I love, like, I don't know if you can tell, like, I'm a little over exuberant talking about this. So I love getting people woken up to life. And I can be found at 4000mondays.com. Like, I live there. And so there's a contact form. We can chat, we can talk, riff, talk more about pizza in Chicago, whatever. But let's really just talk about mortality as a motivator. But yeah, 4000mondays.com. Let's do it.
4000mondays.com. You heard it here first. Get in touch with Jodi. Bring her to your campus. I tell you what, it is going to be phenomenal. So, I really enjoyed the time here with you, Jodi, today. Thank you so much for spending it with me, spending it with our audience. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed Jodi's talk, make sure that you like it and share it with other college students on social media, because they need to hear Jodi's words as well. So thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Jodi.
Thank you. You're just awesome. You know what? When in a life where time is scarce, I'm glad I spent time with you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Very, very sweet. Thank you to our audience for being here. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next time.